He sold my car without asking, said it was for my own good. But that same afternoon, I took his brand new SUV and drove away without a word. The keys were sitting right there on the hallway table, like an offering. Maybe he thought I wouldn't notice my old Chevy missing, or maybe he thought I wouldn't do anything about it. He's always underestimated me, even when he was a boy, especially now that I'm 74 and, as he calls it, vulnerable. I'm not vulnerable. I'm angry. He came in that morning, all smiles, hugging me too hard, saying things like, "Mom, you'll thank me one day." I should have known something was off. Jason only visits when he wants something or wants to cover up something. He made himself coffee in my kitchen, didn't even ask. Then casually said, "Oh, by the way, I sold the Chevy. Got a decent deal too. We'll get you rides to the pharmacy and such." I stood there, staring at him over the rim of my mug. He sold my car. My name was on the title. I'd bought it new when I turned 60, back when my Arthur was still alive. We drove to the coast in that car. I took my granddaughter to school in that car. It had a dent on the passenger side from when I misjudged the mailbox, and a little pine tree air freshener that never smelled like anything but home. He sold it like it was nothing. Like I was nothing. And worse, he did it without telling me, without asking. When he left, he said, "I've got errands to run. Just rest today, Mom." He patted my shoulder like I was a cat. I didn't answer him, didn't even look at him. Then I saw the SUV in my driveway, glossy black, too big for the street. Some German brand I couldn't pronounce. He'd mentioned it last month. Something about a promotion, treating himself. Guess that treat came from what he made off my car, or from the money I gave him last Christmas. I should have kept it in a drawer. The keys were there on the table, next to the mail. I took them without thinking. I took my purse. I locked the door behind me, slow and careful, and climbed into that oversized beast of a vehicle. It smelled like plastic and leather and some awful cologne. I adjusted the seat. I turned the key. The engine purred like it knew it didn't belong to me, but it didn't care. And neither did I. I drove out of the driveway, past the hedge Arthur trimmed every spring, past the house with the little red door where Mrs. Langford used to wave at me every morning. She died 2 winters ago. A stroke, they said. Her daughter put the house on the market before the ground thawed. The roads were quiet. It was early still. Sunlight crept through the branches like a secret. For a moment, I felt like I was 20 again, stealing away from my father's farm in the old Ford pickup to meet Arthur at the reservoir. I wasn't sure where I was going. I just knew I needed to go. So I drove. No radio, no GPS. Just silence and road and the weight of years I hadn't spoken of to anyone. Let Jason wonder where I went. Let him call. Let him stew. He thought I'd sit still, that I'd accept what he decided on my behalf. He doesn't know me at all. I didn't drive far. My joints won't let me. But far enough to feel the distance, to let the silence settle into something more than just noise. I ended up in the parking lot of an old diner off Route 17, the kind with peeling paint, dusty windows, and a neon sign that hadn't buzzed in years. We used to stop there when Arthur and I went on long drives. He loved their meatloaf. I loved their pies. Not for the taste, but because they reminded me of summers from long before. Sun, sweat, and the clink of real silverware on porcelain plates. The place hadn't changed much. Still had the same faded booths, the same old man behind the counter with his crossword and a pencil tucked behind his ear. He looked up when I walked in, nodded like I'd just been there yesterday. "Coffee?" he asked. "Yes, please," I said, sliding into a corner booth. The SUV was visible through the window, like some alien creature among the rusted pickups and battered sedans. It didn't belong here. Neither did Jason, really. He always said he hated these dusty places, said they made him itch. I suppose memory does that to men who spend their lives running from it. I sipped the coffee. It was awful and perfect. Bitter, hot, honest. I didn't bring my phone, didn't need to. Jason was probably calling every 5 minutes by now, pacing in his expensive shoes, wondering whether to call the police or the press. I smiled into the cup. He could wait. For once, I'd left him hanging. I remembered the first time I bought the Chevy. Arthur and I had just paid off the mortgage. We took some of our savings. The portion he said was for whatever Martha wants. And we went to the dealership. I didn't pick the cheapest or the prettiest. I picked the one that made me feel solid behind the wheel. I signed the papers myself. Arthur didn't even ask the price. He always said, "A woman's got to have something that's hers. Otherwise, the world will take everything." I didn't understand that back then. I do now. Jason never liked the Chevy. Said it was too old, too slow, too everything. Every time he came over, he'd mention a trade-in, a deal he saw, a friend at a dealership. I always said no. He always smiled like I was a child who didn't understand math. But I understood just fine. I understood when he stopped calling, unless he needed help with the kids. When he started sending his wife instead of coming himself. When the birthday cards stopped having words and just had checks. They think aging means softening. That time turns us into pliable things. But I haven't softened. I've just learned to wait. The waitress came over. A young girl with a tight ponytail and tired eyes. "Refill?" I nodded. She poured and lingered. "Nice car?" she said, glancing out the window. "Yours?" I looked her straight in the eye. "For now." She grinned like she didn't need to know the rest. After I finished the coffee, I drove again. This time through the streets I hadn't visited in years. Past the community center where I used to volunteer. Past the lot where they held the summer carnival. Past the church where Arthur's service was held. And then, just like that, I turned the wheel and headed home. Not because I was done, but because I needed to see it, my house, my door, my silence, through different eyes. I parked the SUV right where the Chevy used to be. The sun had shifted, casting long shadows across the lawn. A few neighborhood kids biked past, not looking twice at me. The world keeps spinning, no matter what's missing. Inside, the house smelled like lemon cleaner and old paper. Jason's cologne still hung faintly in the hallway. He'd probably come by while I was out, snooping, fretting, checking the mailbox like it might contain a clue. I took off my coat, hung it neatly. Then I sat at the kitchen table and pulled out my notepad. On the first line, I wrote, "Things that are mine." And under it, my house, my name, my memory, my silence, my decisions, I underlined the last one. Twice. Let Jason wonder. Let him worry. This wasn't about revenge. It was about remembering who I am, and making sure he does too. The first call came at 1:17 p.m. I let it ring. By the third call, I'd turned the ringer off entirely. The phone sat face down on the kitchen table, vibrating occasionally like a small, frantic animal. I didn't touch it. Let him stew. I imagined the scene playing out in that pristine suburban driveway of his. Jason stepping out with his phone to his ear, half smiling, thinking I'd be ready to thank him for sorting out the car situation. Then that slow shift in his expression, like a curtain being pulled back. The spot where the SUV should have been, empty, his head tilting. A pause. Another glance at the spot. Still empty. Maybe he thought it had been stolen. Maybe he thought I'd had a senior moment and wandered off. He'd like that, wouldn't he? It would fit the narrative. Old mom, slipping, needing guidance, needing decisions made for her. But I hadn't slipped. I had driven. By late afternoon, I saw a shadow pass by my living room window. Quick, agitated. A knock followed. 3 sharp raps, no hesitation. Jason. I stayed seated. "Mom," he called through the door. "You home?" His voice was tight, that edge he gets when he's pretending not to be angry. I didn't answer. I sipped my tea. "I've been calling. Can you open the door, please? I just want to talk." He paused. "Look, I'm sorry about this morning. I didn't mean to surprise you like that." I almost laughed. Didn't mean to surprise me, as if selling someone's property behind their back is a birthday prank gone wrong. He waited a few seconds, knocked again. "Is the SUV here? I mean, it's fine. I'm not mad. Just, can we talk?" He sounded less sure now. That's the thing about people like Jason. They're used to being in control, used to arranging the pieces, knowing where everyone stands. The second something shifts, the second someone refuses to play, they start flailing. Eventually, his voice dropped lower. I couldn't make out the words. Maybe he was on the phone again. Maybe with the police. I half hoped he'd try to report the car stolen. That would be a fun conversation, explaining to the officer that he'd sold his mother's car and I'd driven off in his without asking. 2 can play that game. I stayed quiet. After a while, I heard footsteps retreat. A car door slam. The sound of an engine roaring off, too fast for a residential street. Only then did I move. I went to the window, pulled the curtain just enough to watch him drive away in some loaner, or maybe an Uber. He hadn't even noticed the SUV parked under the carport, tucked just enough into the shadows. It was still there, large and smug, like it belonged to someone who didn't take orders. I didn't feel triumphant. I felt steady. There's a difference. I sat back down and opened the drawer where I kept my oldest things. Not documents, not yet. Just fragments of a life built piece by piece. A receipt for my first washer and dryer. A faded postcard from a road trip Arthur and I took through Montana. A certificate from the county recognizing me for 25 years of work at the library. And beneath it all, the original title of the Chevy. Still in my name. Jason must have forged something to sell it. Or maybe he'd sweet-talked someone into believing he had the authority. I'd let the anger rise for a moment, then let it go. Not now. Not yet. I put the title away and opened my checkbook. In neat rows, I saw the evidence. Birthday checks to the grandkids. A $3,000 gift to Jason last fall for his property tax. $7,500 for a temporary cash flow thing the year before. I stopped counting at $40,000. My name, my handwriting, my signature, buying my way into a son's attention. No more. I pulled out a clean sheet of paper, wrote a single sentence. You sold something that was mine, so I took something that was yours. Now we're even. I folded it once, slid it into an envelope, left it blank. I'd decide later if he'd ever get to read it. For now, I had something better than words. I had his silence, just like he's had mine for years. The Chevy wasn't just a car. It was the first thing I ever bought purely for myself. I was 60 years old. Arthur had been gone for 2 years by then. The silence in the house had thickened into something almost living, a thing that curled around the corners and settled on my shoulders. I kept busy, of course. Volunteered at the library. Helped with the church bazaar. Took long walks through neighborhoods I didn't live in. But nothing filled the space he left. One morning, I woke up, looked out the window, and realized my old sedan, the one Arthur used to drive, was still sitting in the driveway like a ghost. It hadn't moved in months. I hadn't driven it since the day I brought home his ashes. Something about it felt wrong, like trying to wear someone else's shoes. So I sold it. Got a few $100s, cash. Jason thought I was being impulsive, said I should let him help, said I should lease something newer, safer. But I didn't want a lease. I didn't want paperwork or salesmen with rehearsed smiles. I wanted something I could buy outright, something I could drive with my name on the title and no one else's hand on the wheel. That's how the Chevy came into my life. It wasn't flashy. 4 doors, deep blue, just a few years old. A retired couple had owned it before me, kept it clean, low mileage. The dealership manager raised an eyebrow when I said I'd be paying in full. I wrote the check, signed the documents, and drove it off the lot with the windows down and the radio off. That drive home was one of the first times I felt like a whole person again. Not a widow, not a mother. Just Martha. A woman behind the wheel of her own life, if only for a stretch of quiet road. That car took me everywhere. I drove it to the farmer's market every Saturday, rain or shine. Took Rebecca, Jason's oldest, to ballet when Marlene got too busy. Hauled quilts to the church raffle, pies to the county fair, bags of groceries to neighbors who didn't ask. When I felt sad, I'd go for a long drive and talk to Arthur as the trees whipped past. Sometimes I swore I could hear him answering. I kept the glove box neat, registration, tissues, peppermints, a flashlight. In the back seat, there was always a folded blanket, just in case. The trunk had jumper cables I never used, but it made me feel responsible having them. The gas cap stuck sometimes. You had to jiggle it just right. I never minded. Jason minded. He called it that dinosaur. Said it rattled. That the air conditioning smelled funny. That I was too old to be driving around alone in something that didn't have rear cameras or lane sensors. He always couched it as concern. "I just don't want anything to happen to you," he'd say, while tapping away on his phone. "I worry, Mom." But he never worried when he needed a loan. Never worried when I was alone on holidays. Never worried when I spent 3 days in the hospital last year, and he sent flowers. Not a visit, not a call. Just a vase of limp lilies with a card signed by his assistant. He didn't worry then, but that car, my car, represented something he couldn't control. Something he hadn't arranged or approved or provided. It was mine, and that was inconvenient. So he got rid of it. I imagined the conversation he must have had at the dealership. "She's getting older, you know. She'll be safer without it." And maybe he believed it. Maybe he really thought selling it was the right thing to do. But he didn't tell me. That's what stung. Not the loss of steel and rubber and keys, but the quiet assumption that I didn't deserve to be asked. I poured myself another cup of tea and stood at the window. The SUV still sat there, polished and proud. I saw my reflection in its glossy surface. An old woman in a cardigan, arms crossed. Let him come looking, let him explain. He didn't ask when he took what was mine. He won't get to ask when I take what's his. I was never careless with money. Arthur used to joke that I could stretch $1 into next week. He wasn't wrong. We raised Jason on a single income for a time when Arthur's construction work dried up in the winters. I worked part-time at the library, baked for extra cash, sewed patches into every pair of Jason's jeans until the cloth itself gave up. We made it work. Quietly, steadily. No drama. Just discipline. That never changed. Even after Arthur passed. Even after the Social Security checks started coming with my name alone. I lived within my means. Paid off my mortgage early. Kept my pantry full and my debts empty. And when I turned 70, I finally let myself enjoy a little. Better groceries, a comfortable recliner, fresh paint for the bedroom. Jason called it old lady nesting. He said it with a smile, but I remember the tone underneath. He's always had this idea that I don't know how to handle my own finances, that I should let him streamline things. A few years ago, he convinced me to let him set up online access to my accounts in case of emergency. He said it would be easier if he could monitor things, help me stay organized. What he really meant was easier for him. At first, it was just small things. He'd call and mention a recurring charge he noticed, a duplicate payment. Nothing major. But then came the suggestions that I consolidate my savings, that I let him manage my investment account, that I transfer the bills so he could keep track of due dates. And like a fool, I agreed to some of it. Not because I trusted his judgment, but because I was tired. Tired of defending my independence. Tired of being the difficult old woman who still balanced her checkbook by hand. But today, I wasn't tired. I was clear. At 10 o'clock sharp, I walked into the local bank branch with a folder under my arm. The same branch manager, Nancy, greeted me like she always did. Polite, but brisk. She probably assumed I was there to report a lost debit card or ask about interest rates. I need to change access permissions on my accounts, I said. Effective immediately. She blinked. All right, Mrs. Mercer. Do you have someone specific in mind? Yes. My son, Jason Mercer. He no longer requires access. Her pen froze midair. I believe he's currently listed as a limited account manager on 2 of my checking accounts and has visibility on my savings. I want that removed, and I'd like to set up new alerts to come only to me. Nancy straightened. Understood. May I ask if something prompted this change? I gave her a level look. Nothing I care to share, but I'd like to get it done today. It took about 40 minutes. Paperwork, verifications, polite computer clacking. I signed forms without hesitation. I didn't feel sentimental. This wasn't punishment. It was just necessary. When she was done, Nancy pushed the final document across the desk. You're all set, she said. Would you like to add anyone else to the account access in the future? Yes, I replied. My granddaughter, Rachel. But not today. She smiled gently. Of course. I stepped out into the morning air feeling lighter, not younger. I wasn't chasing that illusion, but more myself, more present. The kind of woman who knew where every cent went and who had permission to say no when it mattered. I walked 2 blocks to the post office and bought a fresh book of stamps. No one sends letters anymore, but I still do. I like the ritual, the choosing of words, the lick of the seal, the finality of the drop into the red box. That afternoon, I sat at my kitchen table and wrote a short letter to my lawyer, Harold Price, Arthur's old friend. I'd used him for years. I trusted him. Dear Harold, I'd like to schedule an appointment at your earliest convenience. I have changes to make regarding financial access and personal directives. Please call me, not my son. My number has not changed. Warm regards, Martha Mercer. I sealed it. Placed it by the door. The SUV keys were still in the bowl, untouched. Let Jason call. Let him come knocking again. He might find the doors still locked. He might find them wide open. But one thing was certain now. He wouldn't be the one holding the pen. Rachel called just after sunset. Her voice always had a lilt to it, even when she was worried. "Hi, Grandma. You okay?" I smiled, though she couldn't see it. "Why wouldn't I be?" "Well," she hesitated, "Dad's been pacing the driveway like a raccoon on espresso, and Mom's been calling people in hushed tones for hours. I figured something was up." I stirred my tea. "I imagine they're just having a busy day." A pause. Then, "Did you take his car?" The way she said it, no judgment, just curiosity, made me laugh. A short, dry sound that surprised even me. "I borrowed it," I said. Seemed fair. Another pause. Then Rachel laughed too. A clear, honest laugh that reminded me of a time long ago when she used to sit in my back seat kicking her sneakers against the upholstery, asking if we could get ice cream again. "Grandma," she said, still chuckling, "you're kind of a badass." "Don't use that word," I said, but I was still smiling. "Not around your mother." "Too late," she replied. "Anyway, I think I get it. I mean, I don't know the whole story, but—" Her voice trailed off, uncertain. I waited. I'd learned that trick from Arthur. Let the silence stretch, and people will fill it with the truth. She sighed. "Dad's been weird lately, controlling. He treats you like, I don't know, like you're fragile, but you're not." "No," I said. "I'm not." "And the car, your car, he told us he traded it in, but he didn't say you didn't know. That part came out today." I didn't say anything. I didn't need to. "He shouldn't have done that," Rachel added. Quiet now, almost ashamed. "No," I agreed again. "He shouldn't have." For a moment, we both just breathed on the line, a kind of gentle understanding sitting between us. "I'm not calling to fix anything," she said at last. "I just wanted you to know I'm on your side. If there is a side." "There isn't," I said. "But thank you." She sniffed. "You think he'll come around?" "No," I answered simply. "But that's not the point." Rachel was silent again. Then, softer. "Do you want me to come over? I can bring Thai food." That tugged at something. She was the only one who ever asked if I wanted anything. Not what I needed or what was practical, but what might simply bring comfort. "Not tonight," I said. "But thank you, darling." "Some other time?" "Okay," she said. "But seriously, if you need backup, I have a driver's license and a questionable sense of diplomacy." I laughed again. "I'll keep that in mind." We said our goodbyes. When I hung up, I sat quietly in the dim kitchen, the light overhead buzzing faintly, my hands warm from the tea. Rachel had always been different. She was never the one with her hand out, never the one counting what I gave. She came by with books, not bills. She asked about my headaches, remembered my birthday without Facebook reminders. She made me feel seen, not just as a grandmother, but as a person, a woman, a mind. And now she had noticed the shift. Jason would paint it as a phase, a tantrum, maybe even a cry for help. But Rachel knew better. She saw what others didn't, that sometimes silence isn't surrender, it's strategy. I looked at the note I'd written earlier, the one folded neatly in the envelope by the door. I picked it up, crossed out one line, then rewrote it. "You sold what was mine. I remembered who I am. That's not even. That's correction. I placed it back on the table, right beside the SUV keys. Then I turned out the light and let the quiet fill the house like something earned. The next morning, I put on my navy coat, the one with the deep inside pocket I always liked, and walked to the bus stop. Yes, I could have taken the SUV. It was sitting right there, smug as ever. But today wasn't about drama. It was about intent. And there's something quietly defiant about showing up at a lawyer's office by public transit at 74 with your paperwork in order and your spine straight. Harold Price's office hadn't changed in years. Same oak-paneled walls, same stiff leather chairs, same framed certificates from a time when lettering had flair. He greeted me with a warm smile, his reading glasses low on his nose. "Martha," he said, standing. "You look well?" "I am," I said simply. "But it's time I made a few things clear." He nodded, gestured for me to sit. I placed my folder on his desk and opened it. "I want to review my will, my power of attorney, all of it." He blinked, but didn't ask questions. That's one reason I always trusted Harold. He knew when to keep his mouth shut and his pen moving. We spent over an hour going through the documents. My current will still named Jason as executor. It was something Arthur and I had agreed on years ago, when Jason still came home for Christmas and hadn't yet learned how to weaponize concern. "I want that changed," I said. "He's no longer to have control of my estate, or my medical directives, or any account access." Harold nodded. "Do you have someone in mind as a replacement?" "My granddaughter, Rachel. She doesn't know yet, but she will." We made notes, revised terms, drew up preliminary drafts. When we came to the financial proxies, Harold looked up. "You're certain about this?" "I am." "Martha," he said gently, "I've known you a long time. You and Arthur built your life with care. If this is about a temporary disagreement—" "It's not," I said. My voice was calm. "This is about recognition, about the difference between helping your children and handing them your spine." He studied me for a moment, then nodded, tapped his pen once, and moved on. I liked that about Harold. He didn't rush to soothe. He let the truth sit in the room like an extra person. We arranged for everything to be finalized within the week. I'd come back to sign in person. No digital nonsense. As I gathered my papers, Harold stood again. "You know," he said, almost wistfully, "Arthur always said you were the steady one. Said you kept the ship pointed forward no matter how the wind blew." I gave a small smile. He was the anchor. I was the rudder. Outside, the wind had picked up. Autumn had begun creeping into the edges of the trees, turning their tips brittle gold. I pulled my coat tighter and waited for the next bus. Back home, I made a simple lunch. Just toast and a hard-boiled egg. I sat at the table and read through the drafts Harold had emailed for review. Everything was in place. Simple, elegant, unmistakable. Jason would not be pleased. But then, Jason had lived for too long in a world where my discomfort was convenient. I wasn't out to punish him, but I wasn't going to reward him either. He sold my car without asking. He called it a kindness. I wondered what word he'd use when he realized he no longer held the keys to anything that mattered. Probably betrayal. But he wouldn't understand the difference between betrayal and boundaries. I did. And now, so would the law. I've always been a list maker. Groceries, bills, Christmas cards. Back when Arthur was alive, he used to tease me for it. Said I could catalog a thunderstorm if I had the time. But he respected it. Said it was my way of keeping the world from unraveling. After Harold's office, after the toast and the egg, I took out a clean yellow legal pad and wrote at the top, "Things I've paid for, Jason Mercer." Just like that. Not helped with. Not contributed toward. Paid. I drew a neat line beneath the title, uncapped my pen, and started writing. 2003, down payment for Jason and Marlene's first home, $25,000, 2006. New HVAC unit when their AC went out, $7,400, 2007. Private kindergarten tuition for Rachel, $9,000, 2008. Car loan cosign, later repaid by me when Jason missed 3 payments, $11,600, 2010. Emergency dental surgery for Jason, uninsured, $2,200, 2012. Bridge loan for Jason's business idea, never repaid, $15,000, 2015. Summer camp for Rachel and Evan, $3,800, 2016. Marlene's certification program for real estate, $4,500, 2018. New roof after storm damage, $10,000, 2019. Legal fees during brief separation, $6,300, 2020. Jason's property tax bill to avoid a lien, $4,750, 2021. Christmas money for the kids, $1,000, 2022. Landscaping project just to keep up appearances, $5,100, 2023. Short-term liquidity issue, $8,000. And finally, 2024. Sold my car without consent. Gained $5,500. Total $114.50 emotional interest, immeasurable. I stopped there. The page wasn't full, but the list was. It didn't even include the smaller things. Groceries slipped into his trunk, just because. Checks tucked into birthday cards. The babysitting. The quiet loans. The way I let him talk over me. The way I said nothing when he took and took, because I didn't want to cause tension. They say love keeps no record of wrongs. But this wasn't about wrongs. It was about clarity. I sat with that number for a while. $114,150. And still, somehow, I didn't own the dignity of being asked before my car was sold. I folded the list and slid it into a file labeled "For Reference." Not revenge, just evidence. I wasn't going to wave it in his face. I wasn't going to bring it up at Thanksgiving. But if he ever dared to ask why the documents had changed, why the door had stayed locked, why the phone stopped ringing, I'd have this, a record, a reckoning. In the evening, I sat on the porch and watched the sky change colors like a secret being told slowly. A boy on a bike rode past and waved. I raised my fingers in reply. The SUV still sat in the driveway. It didn't feel like mine, but it didn't feel like his either. That night, I slept with the window open. Just a crack. Enough to let in the cool air and the sound of branches shifting in the dark. When I closed my eyes, I thought of Arthur. Of the time he came home with a single gerbera daisy and no explanation. When I asked why, he just said, "Because sometimes the person holding everything up deserves to have something handed to them." I never told Jason that story. I don't think he would have understood. It was just past noon when I saw Nadine tending to her roses. She lived 3 doors down, 78, sharp as a tack, never missed a morning walk. We weren't close friends, not in the way young people mean friendship. But there was a quiet rhythm between us, a shared glance at the mailbox, a nod over the fence. She'd lost her husband 2 years before I lost Arthur. We never talked much about it, but the grief made its own kind of introduction. That day, I walked down with a pitcher of iced tea and 2 glasses. No announcement, no invitation. Just the quiet decision to sit in someone else's shade for a while. She looked up, took one glance at the pitcher, and said, "Lord, something must have happened." I smiled. Not a tragedy, just a shift. She nodded, wiped her hands on a towel draped over the fence, and motioned to the porch. We sat in the wicker chairs. Her roses climbed the trellis beside us, stubborn and beautiful. After a long sip, she said, "So, what did the boy do?" I raised an eyebrow. "What makes you think it was Jason?" "Because we're not sitting here over tea when Rachel forgets to call." "Fair point," I told her. Not everything, not the bank or the papers or the number on the list. Just the shape of it. The car, the silence, the decision made without me. Her mouth twitched only once, at the part about him calling it for her safety. She didn't ask if I was sure. She didn't suggest maybe he meant well. She said, "They love our strength until it gets inconvenient. Then they call it stubbornness." I nodded. "I'm tired of being handled." Nadine leaned back. "Let me tell you something. When Arnold was alive, he made all the calls. I didn't mind. We had a rhythm. But after he passed, the kids circled like I was a wounded animal. Every visit came with a checklist. Sell the house, downsize, stop driving, let someone manage the bills, all out of love. And did you?" She looked at me square. "I did none of it, and I sleep just fine." We sat with that for a while. Then she asked, "You planning to give the car back?" "I haven't decided," I said. "It's not about the car anymore." "No," she said. "It's about being reduced." I looked at her. She met my gaze without flinching. That's what they do. Piece by piece. One little decision after another. Not to be cruel. They don't even realize they're doing it. But they start trimming you down, making you manageable. And if you're not careful, one day you wake up and realize you've been gently erased. Her words settled into the cracks like rain. "I won't go out like that," I said. "No, you won't," she replied. "I've seen the way you move. Quiet doesn't mean weak. It just means you're saving your breath for something that matters." I refilled her glass. She nodded in thanks. After a while, she said, "You know what you're doing?" "I do." "And you're not doing it out of spite?" "No." "Then you don't owe anyone an explanation, especially not a man who thinks he's rescuing you by deciding what you're allowed to keep." I smiled. Not because I needed her permission, but because I knew she understood. When I walked back home, the sun was high and warm on my back, the kind of warmth that feels earned, not given. The SUV was still there. So was the silence, and both, for the moment, belonged exactly where they were. I was clipping dead leaves off the porch fern when his car pulled up. Not the SUV, of course. That was still in my driveway, unmoved. He came in something borrowed or rented, sleek, silver, forgettable. The kind of car people drive when they care about impressions more than comfort. He parked too close to the curb and got out like a man expecting to be forgiven, just for showing up. I didn't move, just kept clipping, methodically. "Mom," he said, like we'd just bumped into each other at the grocery store. "Jason." He walked up the steps slowly, like I might bite. He had that practiced smile, the one he used at barbecues and client dinners, the one that said, "I'm composed, even when everything's a mess." "I've been trying to call you," he said. "I noticed." He waited for an opening. None came. I know you're upset," he began. I stopped clipping, looked at him. "I'm not upset," I said. "I'm clear." He blinked. "Clear about what?" "That I no longer accept decisions made for me." "Mom, you sold my car, Jason, without asking. You didn't even think I deserved to be told." "I was trying to protect you. That thing was ancient, unsafe." I raised an eyebrow. "Funny." "It never failed me, not once. Unlike some people." He sighed, shifted his weight. Can we talk inside? No. He blinked again. No? I didn't stutter. He looked past me into the house, like the answers might be in the curtains or the lamp. I think this is getting out of hand, he said, more to the porch than to me. You're not in charge of the scale anymore. That landed. He stiffened, dropped the fake casual tone. Okay, fine. You took the SUV. I shouldn't have touched your car. But can we stop playing this game now? I let that hang between us. I'm not playing, Jason. I'm reclaiming. His jaw tightened. Do you want me to apologize? Is that what this is? No, I said. I want you to understand that you crossed a line, and that from now on, there are consequences. Mom, he said, taking a step forward, lowering his voice like I might be irrational, like I might need soothing. Don't make this bigger than it needs to be. Let's talk. Like adults. I stared at him. I am talking, and I'm not the one who shrank me down to a liability on your checklist. He opened his mouth, closed it. Then, Marlene's embarrassed. Rachel's confused. Everyone's asking questions. They'll survive. And what should I tell them? That my mother's lost her mind and stolen my car? Tell them I remembered where I parked my dignity. He exhaled sharply, anger starting to show now. You're being unreasonable. No, Jason. I was unreasonable for decades. Reasonable meant saying yes to everything, smiling through disappointment, accepting that your comfort mattered more than my boundaries. That was unreasonable. He didn't answer. I turned back to the fern. I'm not letting you in today, I said. Not because I hate you, but because I need space, and because you need silence. Mom, I'm your son, and I'm still your mother. He stood there, caught in his own logic, then shook his head, muttered something, and walked back to the car. Didn't slam the door, didn't peel off, just drove away. I watched until the silver disappeared around the bend. Then I went inside. And for the first time in a long time, I locked the door not out of fear, but choice. He came back the next day. This time, he didn't park on the street. He pulled halfway into the driveway, as if claiming territory. The SUV still sat there, clean and silent, unbothered by the chaos it caused. I was in the kitchen when I heard his footsteps on the porch. The knock was louder now, not angry, but controlled, practiced. The kind of knock that says I'm being calm on purpose. I opened the door but didn't step aside. Jason, Mom. We stood there like two people meeting in the middle of a chessboard. I need to speak with you, he said. So speak. He looked past me again, then straightened. His voice went low. I talked to the dealership about the car. I figured you would. They said I signed the paperwork, that it was legal. But it was your car, Mom. It was still in your name. It was, I said. He waited. Wanted me to explain something. I didn't. And now the SUV is gone, he added. No one knows where it is. It's not gone, I said. It's in the driveway. I mean, it's not where it's supposed to be. Ah. He took a deep breath, trying, really trying, not to lose control. I could see it in the way his fingers curled into his palms. I'm asking you to return it. No. His mouth twitched. Then I'll have to involve the police. I nodded. You should. Be sure to tell them everything. That you sold a vehicle that didn't belong to you, that you forged implied consent, that the money went into your account, that I responded by driving a car registered in your name but paid for with money you pulled from the sale of mine. He didn't speak. You can even show them the texts, I added. If you're honest enough to admit you didn't send any. Jason's shoulders dropped slightly, not in defeat, just in the slow realization that this wouldn't go his way. I didn't mean for it to turn into all this, he said, quieter now. No one ever does, I replied. But here we are. I just thought you didn't need to be driving that old thing anymore. You thought I didn't need the one thing in my life that was entirely mine. You decided that for me. He said nothing. I softened, just a fraction. Not because I pitied him, but because I saw, finally, the hollow behind his anger. You're not a bad man, Jason. You're a man who learned to take without asking. And for years, I let you. He looked at me sharply. That's not fair. It's not supposed to be. It's just true. I was trying to help. No, you were trying to control. You wrapped it in help because that's the only language you've ever been comfortable using with women. We can receive your solutions, but not your respect. That one landed. I saw it in the flush creeping up his neck. He ran a hand through his hair. So what now? You keep the car? I don't know yet. You're serious. I'm 74, Jason. I don't bluff. Silence again. I'm not the villain here, he said at last. No, I agreed. You're just someone who doesn't know how to hear no. And now you've heard it. He stepped back, looked down at the steps, then out at the street. You've really changed. No, I said. I've just stopped pretending. He looked at me, searching for the woman he thought he could manage, the one who answered his calls, who opened her checkbook, who swallowed her questions. She wasn't home anymore. Without another word, he walked back to his car and drove off. I closed the door gently behind him and stood in the hallway, hand still on the knob. I didn't feel triumphant. I felt intact. And after all these years, that was enough. Rachel called just after 8. I was folding towels. The good ones. The ones I keep in the linen closet for guests who never come. Hi, Grandma, she said. Her voice was softer than usual. Careful. I'm here, I replied. I heard something, and I didn't know if I should tell you, but I can't stop thinking about it. I sat down on the edge of the bed, towel in my lap. All right, I said. Go ahead. She took a breath, like someone preparing to jump into cold water. I overheard Mom and Dad talking last night. They didn't know I was in the hallway. They were arguing about money. I said nothing, just waited. Mom said something like, "You promised me this wouldn't happen again. You said selling the car would cover it." Rachel paused. And then she asked him what he planned to do now that you'd taken the SUV. She said they couldn't refinance again, that the credit cards were maxed. Another pause. I think he sold your car to cover some kind of debt, Grandma. Something urgent, and he didn't want you to know. I closed my eyes, not in shock, in confirmation. I'd suspected it. The way he avoided eye contact, the tightness in his voice, the urgency with which he'd tried to frame it all as concern for my safety. It was never about me. It was about what I could be converted into. Collateral. Thank you for telling me, I said quietly. I didn't know if I should, she whispered. But it didn't feel right. Carrying it. You did the right thing. She sniffed. I don't know what's going on with them. I don't even think Mom knew he didn't ask you. She didn't, I said. That part, at least, I believe. Silence stretched between us for a moment. I'm sorry, Rachel said. For what? For him. For all of it. You deserve better. My throat tightened, but I wouldn't let it break. It's not your apology to make, I said. And I didn't do this to be avenged. I did it to be awake. Rachel let out a breath, uneven. Are you going to keep the car? I haven't decided. Whatever you do, she said, you're not alone. I looked around the room. Familiar walls, Arthur's reading lamp, the soft creak of the house at night. I'd spent years trying to keep everything steady, quiet, predictable. All while the ground shifted under my feet in small, invisible ways. But now I saw it all. I saw the line between generosity and erasure. I saw the slow, polite theft of agency, the kind that doesn't come with violence, but with explanations, with smiles, with good intentions that taste like rust. I know I'm not alone, I said at last. After we hung up, I went to the kitchen and stood by the window. Outside, the SUV gleamed under the porch light. I watched it the way you watch something that used to mean one thing and now means something else entirely. He'd sold my car to keep his own life stitched together. Without a word, without a choice. And when I took something back, he called it theft. But what do you call it when someone empties your life, one favor at a time? I turned off the light, leaving the kitchen in shadow. Let him wonder what I'll do next. Let him sit with the silence. This time, it belongs to me. I didn't sleep that night. Not from anger. Not from fear. Just from seeing too clearly. There are moments in life when the curtain lifts, not with drama, not with fire, just a slow, steady rise, and you're left looking at the truth in full daylight. And you can't unsee it. I sat in the living room, the lamp on low, the house hushed. My hands folded in my lap like they used to be when Arthur and I sat through church services. Attentive, but quiet. Only this time, the sermon came from inside. Jason sold my car to pay for his mistake. He didn't ask. He didn't explain. He didn't trust me enough to tell the truth. But he trusted me enough to clean up after him. That was the final crack. Not the car, not the money, but the assumption that I would carry the weight silently, that I'd rather be shielded from the ugliness than respected with the truth. He thinks I don't need it. Truth. He thinks I want comfort. He doesn't understand that I've lived through too much to find comfort in lies. By morning, I'd made up my mind. I called Harold's office at 9:03 a.m. He picked up himself, which surprised me. I'm ready, I said. Let's finish the paperwork. He didn't ask questions. He just gave me a time. By lunchtime, I was seated in his office, pen in hand, reading the documents line by line. No rush, no blinking. I removed Jason as executor, removed him from medical decisions, removed him from every future role that required trust. And I gave it all to Rachel. Not because she's perfect, not because I want to punish him through her, but because when she called me that night, voice shaking, honesty straining through fear, she did something her father hadn't done in years. She told me the truth even when it was messy. She saw me. That's what this was really about. Not vengeance, not even fairness, but visibility. I've spent too many years being useful but invisible. Quiet but needed. Generous but managed. Loved in that cold, practical way some people reserve for their aging parents, but never fully known. And now I was done with that version of love. Harold handed me the last page. If you're sure, he said gently. I'm certain. I signed, one stroke at a time. Slow, final. When it was done, he nodded. You don't need to explain, he said. I know, I said, but I'll tell you anyway. And I did, in brief, simple terms, not the drama, just the facts. He didn't interrupt, just listened. When I left the office, the air felt lighter. The sun wasn't warm, not in late fall, but it touched my skin like recognition. I stopped by the grocery store on the way home, bought milk, apples, a tin of sardines I didn't need but used to keep around for Arthur. Out of habit, maybe, out of respect. Back at home, I placed the documents in the fireproof box I keep in the hall closet, tucked in neatly, labeled clearly. If something happened to me tomorrow, Rachel would find everything in its place, and Jason would find nothing left to claim. No control, no rights, no handles. I sat on the porch with a blanket over my knees and watched the wind move through the trees. I didn't feel powerful. I felt clean, like a wound after it's been rinsed, even if it still stings. Inside the house, the phone rang once, then stopped. I didn't check who it was. I didn't need to. Rachel came over on Sunday afternoon. No warning, just a gentle knock on the door and the outline of her face through the screen. I opened it without hesitation. She stood there holding a paper bag. "I brought lemon scones," she said. "Store-bought. Please don't judge me." "I've eaten worse," I replied. She smiled, a little unsure, and stepped inside. We sat at the kitchen table. No tea, not yet. Just silence at first, but a warm kind, the kind that sits between people who no longer need to fill it. "I don't know where to start," she said. "Then don't start," I said. "Just be here." She looked down at her hands. Her nails were chipped. She'd always chewed them when she was thinking too hard, just like her father used to, back when he still thought out loud. Finally, she asked, "Did you really change everything?" "Yes." Her eyes met mine. "All of it?" "All of it." She didn't flinch. "Why me?" I took a moment. "You're not a child anymore, Rachel. You see things, not just what people say, but what they mean. You've always done that. And more than that, you've never tried to use it to your advantage." She opened her mouth, then closed it again. "You never asked for anything," I said. "You just showed up. You saw me. Not as a burden, not as a task, but as a person. That's rare. I don't know what to say. You don't have to say anything. But what if I mess it up?" "You will," I said. "Eventually. Everyone does. But not because you're careless, because you're human, and because life never plays fair. I'm not leaving you a kingdom. I'm leaving you trust. It's different." She nodded slowly. I could see the weight of it settling on her shoulders, but not crushing her. She was thinking, not about money or documents, but about the shape of responsibility. "I talked to Dad," she said softly. I said nothing. "He's angry, confused. I don't think he really understands what he's done. Or maybe he does and just doesn't know how to admit it." "Maybe both," I said. "He thinks you're punishing him." "I'm not." "I know," she said. "But he doesn't know how to tell the difference." I reached for her hand. She let me hold it. "He took too much for too long," I said. "Not just money, he took space, voice, assumption, and I let him, because I thought it was kindness. Because mothers are told that sacrifice is a virtue." Rachel's throat moved, but she didn't speak. "I'm not angry at him for needing," I said. "I'm angry that he thought he didn't need to ask." She swallowed. "He's not going to come around soon, maybe not ever. I'm not waiting." The kitchen was quiet. The house, old as it was, held still with us. No creaks, no distractions. Just two women, not child and grandmother, but equals, looking at something unspoken and not blinking. Rachel looked at me. If you ever change your mind, I won't, I said. But thank you for leaving space for that. We sat there a while longer. Eventually, I put the kettle on. She set the table. We didn't talk about wills or cars or men who disappoint us. We talked about fall recipes, about the neighbor's cat, about the fact that someone had painted their house purple down the street, and how proud we both were that it didn't look awful. Before she left, she paused at the door. You know, she said, I used to think getting older meant getting smaller, quieter, less. That's what they want us to think, I said. She tilted her head. And what is it really? Getting older, I said, is finally being loud in your own voice, even if it's quiet. She smiled, kissed my cheek, and left. After the door closed, I stood for a moment in the hallway, one hand resting lightly on the frame, not to hold myself steady, but just to feel the wood. Old, strong, unbending, beneath my palm. Like something remembered, like something earned. I gave the car back, not as a gesture of peace, not because he asked, because I didn't want it anymore. I called a tow service myself, told them the SUV belonged to my son and that he could sort out the paperwork. They came 2 days later, flatbed, humming in the driveway like a gentle goodbye. I watched from the porch as they loaded it up. No sadness, no vindication, just space. Finally, space. It pulled away at dusk. I didn't tell Jason. I didn't need to. I knew he'd find out. The next day, an envelope arrived in the mail. No return address, but I recognized his handwriting on the back. Inside was a check. $5,500. The amount he'd gotten for the Chevy. No note. No apology. I placed it on the kitchen counter and stared at it for a long time. Then I tore it in half. Once, then twice. The paper made a sharp, clean sound, like something being finalized. I didn't need his refund. That wasn't what had been taken. He hadn't stolen a car. He'd stolen choice. And now I'd taken it back. I spent that afternoon cleaning out the garage. It still smelled faintly of motor oil and pine from the old Christmas boxes. I swept it end to end, pulled the folded lawn chairs down from the rafters, and opened the back cabinet where Arthur used to keep his tools. Most were still there, rusted but familiar. I found the tin box where I kept the last of the Chevy's things, the spare key, the registration stub, a faded photo of me standing beside it the day I brought it home. I looked so sure of myself in that picture. Not young, not flashy, just whole. I threw nothing away. I just closed the lid and slid it back on the shelf. By evening, the garage was empty again, and I liked it that way. Later that night, I took out my journal. Not the daily one, the one I write in only when something truly shifts. I wrote, "Today, I didn't win. I remembered who I am, and I let go of who I'm not." Then I closed the book. The house was still, the kind of stillness that doesn't ache anymore. I stood at the kitchen window and looked out at the clean driveway. The sky above it stretched wide and soft, the last light sinking gently behind the trees. I thought about all the versions of myself that had lived in this house. The young mother with burnt casseroles and scraped knees to kiss. The widow with shaking hands learning how to sleep alone. The woman who almost disappeared into usefulness. Almost, but not quite, because here I was, and I was still me, no longer waiting for permission, no longer hoping for return. Just here, in my house, in my name, in my life. Rachel called the next morning. "I saw a tow truck on your street yesterday," she said. "Yes," I answered. "I made some room." "For something new?" "No," I said. For nothing at all. She was quiet for a second. Then, "That's the bravest thing I've heard in a long time." I didn't feel brave. I felt free. And sometimes, those are the same thing.